So,
So yeah, my name's Jeremy Elliott, and I live in San Luis, Colorado. And I'm the executive director of the Costilla County Economic Development Council. I grew up in Boulder, actually, and or just outside of Boulder. And water was never that relevant to me as a kid growing up. You look up at Long's Peak and say, "Oh yeah, there's not much snow up there right now." Whatever. As I did get older, it was and more subdivisions were being put in the back of my head, I always wondered where's their water coming from. As time went on, I moved down to the San Luis Valley, and water became very relevant. Um, Whether it was through pumping out water to send up to the Front Range from our aquifers, to learning about the acequias, and that whole network of acequias and the community behind that. Um, I used to have a good friend of mine, former county commissioner Joe Gallegos. I would ask him questions about the acequias. I'm like, what's the deal with these ditches? And he's like, no, they're more than just a ditch. It's a whole network of life, where it's the oldest adjudicated water rights in the state are down here, and they're very proud of having those water rights. And it's that water is life for a lot of the people in the community, whether it's growing crops for themselves, growing crops to sell. You now looking up on the mountains, the one right here in town is Culebra Peak, and if that's empty in March, you take notice. There's not going to be a runoff, and there's not going to be an irrigation season. And then that means hay prices go up, and from $3 a bale to 15. And can people afford that? Can people afford to even grow hay to feed their own livestock? Seeing how important that is, and getting people to realize that don't live here to understand that has been a battle for a long time. Down here, if you want to have a strong fight, it comes around water. We experienced it several years ago with a lot of quote unquote off gridders coming down because of cheap land, and then going down to the Rio Grande and literally pumping water out of it into a tank, which is a huge no. Especially, never mind it just not being the right thing to do, but when you start throwing state compacts and all that type of stuff, that water is extremely regulated. And that's when the community will rally and fight for the water and to protect it. It's one of those things where it's a cliche saying water's life, but it is down here. The valley has a weird way of sucking people in. And yeah, it's been one of those things where it was never part of the plan, but here I am. And I talk to friends that still live up there, and they're like, what are you doing living in the middle of nowhere? And it's like, yeah, it's slower pace of life and all that stuff, but there's trade-offs. Not a lot of conveniences, but give that up for quality of life at times. You don't see a lot of crop dusting and pesticides and all that type of stuff. The farming that happens here is the same farming that happened in the 1800s. It's just, instead of using mules to pull a plow, they use tractors. But besides that, you're still doing the whole acequia system. But when you're out in the fields and you see this whole network of how they move water, and then eating some of the produce that's produced in these fields is just amazing. So yeah, it's like people that like the whole going to Whole Foods and buying all the organic stuff. It's like, yeah, we have that right here, and that's why we protect our water.